It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the government says it's working urgently to help Brits on board the cruise ship hit by a deadly disease. 3 people, including a British crew member, are evacuated from the boat as the confirmed number of hantavirus cases rise. Well, the cruise is now expected to head to Tenerife. Passengers will disembark this weekend. We'll have the latest for you. Also tonight, thousands of flights cut as the price of jet fuel soars because of the war in Iran. Industry leaders here insist travellers won't face major disruption. We'll take a look at how many flights have been axed in the UK. Plus, the new laser technology being developed to help spot predators in public spaces. I'll speak to the woman behind the idea. And should we call time on breakfast beers at airports? A holiday tradition for many, but the boss of Ryanair says it leads to disruptive passengers. We'll discuss this later in the show. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Well, we'll start tonight with the latest on the cruise ship that's at the centre of a deadly disease outbreak. A British man with suspected hantavirus has been evacuated from the MV Hondius and is now in a stable condition. The crew member was taken off the boat with another member of crew and a passenger. The ship, which has almost 150 people on board, is now heading for Tenerife, where passengers are expected to disembark this weekend. The government, meanwhile, says it's working urgently to get British nationals on board home safely and as quickly as possible. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore has this report.
The 2 crew members infected by hantavirus, one of them British, were brought to shore by medics protected by full hazmat suits. Alongside them, a close contact of a passenger who died earlier this week. No chances are being taken with this deadly and unusual outbreak. They were transferred by ambulance to aircraft medically equipped to keep them stable on a flight to specialist hospitals in the Netherlands. Just over 140 people remain on board, including this passenger from Jordan.
We're still on the ship off the coast of Cape Verde. From what I understand, we're currently the biggest news story in the world, but so far everything is fine. Everyone on the ship is okay. I just wanted to reassure you that nothing has happened.
The MV Hondius left Ushuaia in Argentina on April the 1st with 150 people on board. We know that on the 11th, a Dutch passenger died at sea. The following day, the ship's captain told other passengers.
One of our passengers sadly passed away last night. Tragic as it is, it was due to natural causes, we believe. I'm told by the doctor we're not infectious.
But as the ship sailed on, the situation became more serious. On the 25th, the man's wife flew with his body from the mid-Atlantic island of St Helena to Johannesburg in South Africa. She became unwell during the flight and was admitted to hospital on arrival. She died a day later. The ship sailed on to Ascension Island, where on the 27th of April, a British man with respiratory symptoms disembarked and was flown to South Africa. He remains in a critical but stable condition. On the 2nd of May, a German national who had developed pneumonia and a fever died on the ship, which arrived in the archipelago of Cape Verde the next day with 2 crew showing symptoms. And Swiss authorities have said there is a new case, a man who had been a passenger on the ship and developed symptoms after returning on a flight from South America. He's in a Zurich hospital. His wife is also in quarantine as a precaution. Medical authorities say it seems to be rare human-to-human spread of the Andes strain of hantavirus. The ship's owners have said it will set sail for the Canary Islands, where regional authorities originally refused permission for it to dock, but that appears to have been overruled by the national Spanish government.
Once the evacuation of all the asymptomatic people has concluded in Cape Verde, the ship will continue towards the Canaries, where it's expected to arrive in the next 3 days at the secondary port of Granadia de Abona. It's a port with very little activity. Once there, a joint sanitary evaluation and evacuation mechanism will be launched to repatriate all passengers, unless medical conditions prevent it.
The ship is expected to reach Tenerife at the weekend, the end of what was supposed to be the cruise of a lifetime, but became a medical nightmare. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
Well, let's get more on this story now. Professor of Medical Microbiology Mark Fielder joins me now. Really good to have your company this evening to talk about this developing story. What have you made of it so far, and how concerned are you by what's going on?
It's a real tragedy for the people on the boat. There's no doubt about that. It's a very difficult situation. As far as the wider world goes, I'm not overly concerned. I don't think this is going to be a big problem in terms of the way the virus is going to spread. It's very much under control. And this virus actually takes quite a lot to transfer from human to human. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to live in animals. It's not designed to live in us. So when it gets into us, it causes a problem. It gives us what we call a terminal host. It can't move on any further. So spread further from patient to patient is likely to be very limited indeed.
Professor Fielder, you may well have seen developments earlier on, some confusion as to where this cruise ship was going to go to allow passengers to disembark, because understandably they want to get off that boat. There is now a plan to take it to Tenerife, some reluctance from the Canary Islands to accept this boat, to host it. Are they right to have concerns? How can you contain this once people disembark?
Well, I think there's a complicated picture, really. It's not going to be that problematic in very many ways. We know what we're dealing with. We know how to handle it. We understand where the infection is. So that's not a mystery. Therefore, we'll be able to assess patients as they come off the boat. They will be medically assessed. If they're not showing symptoms, they are asymptomatic, then they are not going to be spreading this virus. This is not the same as COVID was. So we don't have a situation where the virus is very transmissible, and we don't have a situation where asymptomatic patients can spread the virus. So knowing that these patients are asymptomatic means that they are not going to be spreading the virus. So those patients can be looked after in isolation for a while to make sure that they don't develop symptoms, and then they will be monitored in an ongoing fashion, the classic track and trace type scenario where they'll be contacted every day to see if they've developed any form of symptom. If they have, then they will be medically dealt with to make sure that they can recover as best they can and they don't become an infection risk. So I think the risk to the ongoing populations in Spain or anywhere else where these patients are going to be repatriated is minimal.
You mentioned track and trace there. Obviously, that's a key part of any outbreak. We learnt that here in the UK from coronavirus. It's now very much part of people's lexicon when it comes to, a disease or a virus such as this. 150 people on board. We understand that they visited perhaps 2 destinations before this outbreak showed itself, and medics were aware of it. What kind of scale are we looking at with the track and trace with 150 people on board?
Well, I think the situation we have at the moment is this isn't something you catch by passing someone who's infected. You have to spend a prolonged period of time in their company and in close contact. So this isn't the same as COVID was in terms of, being in the same space is a problem. This is much more, is what we're often deemed as intimate contact, so for a prolonged period. So from that perspective, I don't think we're going to see much of a problem. Where we are going to see some interesting work being done, and that will be undoubtedly being undertaken now, is the epidemiological work to understand where this virus came from in the first place. There are several aspects of where there have been suggestions that travellers may have come into contact with the virus. It's finding out where that was to make sure that we can alleviate those problems in the future by not getting people to go to those particular areas that are potentially infection risks.
Hantavirus, a name of a disease that many people will never have heard of until just a few days ago. Where does it tend to come from? It's been described as a deadly disease. I think it's important to tell people how treatable it is if you are diagnosed with it. So talk to us about its origins and what people can do and how they can be treated if they contract it.
Yeah, the hantavirus is a part of a group of 20 or so, maybe more viruses that are split across the world. We have the old world viruses and the new world viruses. The old world viruses occur in Europe, so we have various strains across Europe that aren't quite so problematic as these ones. They still do cause interesting disease and problematic disease, but they are treatable. In the new world, you have various strains, one of which is the Andes strain, which is what we're dealing with here. And unfortunately, this is quite a nasty virus, and it can cause problems, and it does very badly, but nonetheless does spread from human to human. Where does it come from? It comes from rats and mice and other rodents and their urine and their feces. And when that dries and gets into dust, the dust gets into the air, you breathe it in, and then you get lung infections, and then that can move on to gastrointestinal or kidney problems as well, which is where the problems arise. As far as treating it goes, there isn't a specific anti-hantavirus treatment, but the earlier we get patients, the better we can treat the symptoms that they are having, and that treatment there supports the patient and prevents the development of a pneumonia or kidney failure. So it's generic treatments that need to be got in early. One of the reasons why the track and trace for patients that are on this boat as they go forward, and for anyone else who's been in contact, is so important, so we can get patients and spot things early before they become too problematic.
Just a final question. Obviously, the boat due to arrive in Tenerife this weekend, the passengers will all be allowed off. And as you said, there will be precautions in place, quarantine, health checks. In terms of when those passengers can safely travel back to their homes, what sort of timescale do you think they're facing?
That's something for the epidemiologists on the ground to really answer. I think I can see them being held in some form of quarantine for a few days just to make sure that nothing overtly develops. And then, assuming they are asymptomatic and therefore not infectious, they will be allowed, I would imagine, this is all speculation on my part, but I'd imagine they'll be allowed home relatively shortly after that, but under constant monitoring to make sure that any sign of any symptom of any form of infectious disease can be picked up immediately, and the patient's treated, both to protect public health and also to protect them as well. So I think there's any risk to the public going forward.
Yeah, safe return home can't come soon enough for those passengers involved. What an ordeal they are going through. Professor Mark Fielder, Professor of Medical Microbiology at Kingston University in London, thank you for your time and expertise this evening.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to bring you the latest pictures from the White House now. President Trump has been speaking to reporters at the White House about the war in Iran. Let's bring you some of what he said.
This will work. You're facing an opponent right now in Iran that has refused to submit. You seem optimistic now as you may be closer to a deal. What's different about this moment now than in other moments where a deal has seemed close?
Well, why do you say they refused to submit? You don't know that. You don't know what's going on behind
U.S. ships a few days ago.
Yeah, no, a few days ago is a long time ago. You know, in the world of war, a few days ago. No, they want to make a deal badly, and we'll see if we get there. If we get there, they can't have nuclear weapons. You know, it's very simple. But what's not to submit? So they had a Navy with 159 ships, and now every ship is blown to pieces and lying at the bottom of the water. They had an Air Force, lots of planes, and they don't have any planes. They don't have any anti-aircraft. They don't have any radar left. Their missiles are mostly decimated. They have some. They have probably 18, 19%, but not a lot by comparison to what they had. And their leaders are all dead. So I think we won. Now it's only a question of, look, if we left right now Iran, it would take them 20 years to rebuild. You would call that, we're in good shape, right?
Fantastic shape.
We're in good shape. And now we're doing well. Now we have to get what we have to get. If we don't do that, we'll have to go a big step further. But with that being said, they want to make a deal. We've had very good talks over the last 24 hours. And it's very possible that we'll make a deal.
So,
yeah,
Mr.
please.
President, thank you, Mr. President. Good to see you. What are the status of these talks? They're very good. Can you just give some insight as to where
Well, we've had talks, and we've had some good talks before, as you know.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the next day, they're like, they forgot what happened. You know, they're proud, like these guys are proud. Nobody more proud than these guys. Sometimes they fight on pride because, you know, they're injured, they're hurt. No matter how great you are, you get hit by somebody else that looks like them. It's very tough, but they have great pride. These people have great pride. The others do too. Enemies have great pride. We went into Venezuela. Smart people, great people. They have a really strong military. We won it very quickly, and we have a fantastic. It's been a great thing for Venezuela. The people are really happy. They're dancing in the streets because they have a lot of money coming in through the big oil companies that are all moving in. I was with ExxonMobil last night. The chairman was here, and we're talking about Venezuela, along with a lot of them. Chevron, they were all here last night. They all want to go there and elsewhere. We just hit a new high in the stock market. The stock market's the highest it's ever been. And I expected that the market would be down 20-25%. I was willing to do that to get rid of a crazy country. Crazy. The people, look, you know, you talk about regime change. Their first level leaders are dead. Their second level leaders are dead. Some of their third level leaders are dead. I call that regime change. But I thought we'd be down maybe 20%, and we're up. The stock market's higher now than when we started this war. And I thought oil prices would go to $200, $250. It's at $100 now. And I think you're surprised, and I'm surprised. But even if it went to 200, it would have been worth it. I understood that. We had just set a record, 50,000 on the Dow, 7,000 on the S&P, a record. And I said, I hate to do this, but we have to make an excursion down to Iran because we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. Look, and this is very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon because as tough as they are, we want to keep them alive. We want to keep all of you alive. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't. And they've agreed to that, among other things. Yeah.
Mr. President, you've had some recent back and forth with Pope Leo. I understand Secretary of State Marco Rubio is going to meet with the Pope tomorrow. What message do you hope he delivers to the Holy Father?
Well, I can tell you this, that as far as the Pope is concerned, and it's very simple, whether I make him happy or I don't make him happy, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And he seemed to be saying that they can. And I say they cannot. Because if that happened, the entire world would be hostage, and we're not going to let that happen. That's my only message.
Well, the effects of the war in Iran being felt globally, particularly in the airline industry. Airlines cutting around 13,000 flights this month. That's globally, as the price of jet fuel soars because of the war. The cuts come ahead of the half-term holidays. However, ministers and industry figures here in the UK insist travellers won't face major disruption. Our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso has been taking a look at whether holidaymakers should be concerned.
The Iran war has got airlines and governments worried about jet fuel and the prospect of shortages. The UK government this weekend has given airlines permission to cancel flights on some routes without facing penalties if they need to save fuel. And that raises the obvious question, is that going to affect summer holidays? We've got some new data that starts to help us answer that question. Let's start at the beginning. The first thing to say is that jet fuel is a real problem. This is why the price has gone up relatively faster and further than any oil product since the Strait of Hormuz was blocked. It spiked immediately after the war began. It's come down a bit. It's still more than double practically where it was, $14,000 a tonne, and that's because supply has been profoundly interrupted. Production is around 500,000 barrels a day short of global demand because the Gulf is effectively closed. Kuwait, Saudi, major exporters, and China has imposed an export ban, and that started to impact flight scheduling. In response, airlines are cutting flights, optimising their schedules, getting rid of non-profitable routes and thinning out schedules, the aim being to try and fly the same number of passengers on fewer flights. We've got some new data that tells us what's happened over 11 days in April. These are flights scheduled for May. 13,000 flights, more than, have been cancelled for May around the world. That's nearly 2 million seats in total. Now, that sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it's a relatively small amount of the global total. Barely 1.5% for both flights and seats. If it tells us anything, it tells us we really do fly a very great deal. Now, the data is from analyst Sirium, and we've broken it down, analysed it to try and see how it breaks down. First, by airports. We've looked at the largest cuts by airport, the most changes, and they largely follow the size of airports around the world. Nearly 4% of flights, the red lines, and 2% in blue there. Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson, that's the world's busiest airport by passenger numbers. Then Beijing, then some big US airports until we get down. The first European airport here is Heathrow. Around 1% of flights, 0.5% of seats have been cut. Now, we've had a look at this again by UK domestic airports. It tells us something quite interesting about what's going on. Look at the most affected here. Nearly 20% of flights at Birmingham Airport affected, more than 10% of seats. Next is London City, Newcastle and Manchester, Stansted and Gatwick. That tells us that point-to-point airports, precisely the ones that scheduled holiday and package flights run from, are the most affected here. And that's why there's so much concern about whether your holiday will be affected. Now, the Transport Secretary says there is not currently disruption to jet fuel supplies, but the government plainly is planning for exactly that. And for now, as long as airlines are offering flights, you should take that in good faith and book them. The price has not soared, which suggests the industry thinks this is going to be sorted. But the longer the blockade of the Gulf goes on, the greater the chance your flight could be affected.
Now, people across the country are preparing to vote in the biggest set of elections since the general election 2 years ago. Tomorrow morning, polling stations will open across Wales, Scotland and most of England in contests that are forecast to redraw the electoral map. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, reports now as the parties make their final pitch to voters.
Out on the campaign trail for the final day ahead of a set of elections that could be truly seismic as our traditional two-party system splits apart.
Thank you.
Tory leader Kemi Badenoch getting out in London boroughs that were once true blue. But she's struggling to drive a Conservative recovery, her party heading for big losses across the country.
What we're seeing is the era of two-party politics moving into multi-party politics. There are no safe seats for any party. We all have to work hard for every vote. What will be a disaster is seeing more Labour, more Lib Dems, more Green, more Reform, because none of these people are serious. The only party that is serious and that has a plan, not just for local councils, but for the country, is the Conservatives.
But voters are serious in their disdain for the two traditional parties, and this man is about to do serious damage.
Vote reform, get Starmer out. If you want real change in national government and in the approach to local government, we are the change option, and we're on that ballot paper in 99.9% of wards across the United Kingdom. And you know what? We're the only true national party. We're campaigning in all parts of the UK. And I think you're going to be surprised how much enthusiasm there is for our message.
Enthusiasm too for the Green Party. Zach Polanski looking to hurt Labour in inner London.
Tonight and tomorrow we have the campaign of our life. And I want to talk about hope. But before I get to hope, I want to talk about the other side for a moment, which is despair. So let's talk about Labour.
Working the wealthy commuter belt, Ed Davey trained on the Tories as the Lib Dems eye hundreds more gains.
We really are pushing the Tories back. I think people are turning to us. And interestingly, these fights are increasingly between the Liberal Democrats and Reform, because people remember how dreadful the Conservatives were, and they're either coming to back Liberal Democrats or some going to Reform.
And it's not just England where Labour and the Conservatives are taking a hammering. In Wales, Plaid Cymru looked to wrest control of the Senedd from Labour. For the first time in nearly 3 decades of devolution, this would be a massive moment. In Scotland, Labour have lost all hope from winning Holyrood back from the SNP. This time around, the party's hoping not to be pushed into third by Reform.
Out leading from the front, I think you've got...
Labour in turmoil, embracing for punishment at the polls. The deputy leader urging the party to stick with Starmer.
We have made some mistakes. We've needed to be set out a clearer sense of direction and a clearer purpose. I think we've started to see that coming through, and I'm pleased about that. But, you know, these elections are coming round faster than that.
What I'm getting to is that you keep saying we, but isn't it that people are really upset with Keir Starmer?
Look, Keir is the leader of the Labour Party, so of course he gets the most stick of everybody. There's no question of that.
Well, he makes the decisions.
And he doesn't make all the decisions, but obviously he takes full responsibility for the decisions of the Labour Party and of the government. And he's been the first to admit where he has made mistakes, whether it was the appointment of Peter Mandelson, whether it was around the winter fuel payments, you know, that's still an issue sometimes on the doorstep with pensioners as well.
But do you think he is the right leader to lead this change agenda?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
These elections will perhaps be looked back on as the moment where Britain broke with its two-party system that's dominated our politics for the past century. We'll potentially have national parliaments in Wales and Scotland led by national parties as reform rips up Labour and Tory dominance in English councils, whilst the Greens march on Labour London. And as for the governing party, Labour could be heading for its worst ever local election performance as voters give their first real ballot box verdict on Starmer's government. It's going to be ugly for Labour. How bloody it gets for Starmer depends on how his cabinet and his party react. The PM hitting the phones to voters ahead of the polls. When the results land, his next job will be to persuade his MPs to stay with him. But that's his party's call, not his. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Bury.
Now to a disturbing case being heard at Preston Crown Court. You may have seen some of this earlier this week. A teacher is accused of abusing and murdering a baby he adopted. Well, Sky's Molly Malone has been following this case for us, and it is really upsetting. We should just warn Molly some of the details that have been revealed today.
Yeah, an incredibly distressing case, SJ. Preston Davey was just 13 months old when his life ended back in July 2023. He'd been in the adoption care of Jamie Varley, who's 37 at the time. He was a teacher, and also his partner, John McGowan Fazakli, who's 32 years old. As you alluded to, some of the details in this case are really distressing. We're going to show you some footage in a moment, which is equally distressing, and it appears to show Jamie very distressed at hospital back in July 2023. He's in his pyjamas. They'd taken baby Preston unconscious to hospital that evening. Jamie, at the point in the footage I'm about to talk you to, Jamie had just been told to come to his child's bedside, that staff couldn't revive baby Preston. The footage you're about to see is body cam footage from the police just after that moment in hospital.
I should have left him. It was minutes. It's minutes. I can't. Listen. No, I can't. I can't. No. This is not happening. This is the Lord. This is not happening. Lord. I can't. No, please. No.
Jamie, come on.
No, I can't. Please kill me. Please.
Jamie.
Please.
Jamie.
I can't. No. This is not.
Jamie.
No.
Jamie, look at me.
No.
Jamie, look at me. Look,
John.
Your son needs you.
He doesn't need me. He doesn't need me. This is my fault. I left him literally 2 minutes when I went and got changed.
Jamie.
He was in his chair.
Jamie, your son needs you.
Mom.
That footage was recorded at 16 minutes past 7 on that evening in July 2023. 4 minutes later, baby Preston was pronounced dead. Medical professionals had worked for nearly an hour to try and resuscitate him. As we saw in that clip, Jamie Varley looks to be in disbelief. It's early evening, he's in his pyjamas saying it's not happening, hitting his wrist, wailing on the floor, calling out for his mum. But Jamie Varley is accused of murdering that young child. His partner John is accused of allowing the baby's death. Both of them are accused of sexual abuse. I should say they both deny the charges. During the 4 months baby Preston was under their adoption care in Blackpool. He was allegedly routinely ill-treated. He was sexually abused, allegedly physically assaulted, and allegedly had indecent images and videos taken of him. The post-mortem found the child had 40 injuries, and so prosecutors say that account in that video shown by Jamie Varley was inconsistent with what was heard in court. Another piece of footage that was shown to jurors at Preston Crown Court today shows Varley cradling the dead baby later that evening and saying, "I probably won't see you again. I'm definitely going to hell." The court also heard how Varley took a year off work. He'd been a teacher at the time, and the jurors heard that he'd struggled as a new parent with a baby who frequently woke during the night, losing his life at just 13 months old. The trial is set to continue at Preston Crown Court tomorrow morning.
Molly, thank you. An extremely upsetting case. Thanks so much. That's Molly Mullane there with the details. There's still to come here on the programme tonight, how a new piece of technology could help spot predators in public spaces and help keep women safe. We'll have the details. And we'll be debating whether airports should call time on breakfast beers. What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story? My next guest tonight is developing a new system to spot predators in public spaces in order to help keep women and girls safe. The tool takes laser technology that's able to track people's movements and apply it to detect unusual behaviour patterns, which can then be flagged to security teams. I sat down with Rosie Richardson and I asked her about the tech.
So our technology is designed to sit really well alongside normal CCTV systems. So what we are is that bird's eye view of a space. So within a normal security control room, if you've ever been in one, you might have 10, 20, 30 CCTV screens. And then the company would also have our system up on a large screen. And what that's going to show them is a large map of the space, and it's going to feed them with alerts for possible incidents that they need to look at. So we're going to be in real time detecting behaviours, detecting patterns of movement. It may be a crowd scattering. It may be a woman receiving unsolicited attention. And throwing up an alert that says, actually, have a look on camera 12 because this may be an incident of interest.
And public transport being the starting point, because not only do they have the kind of system already there that your technology can fit into, but also that is one of the hotspots where violence against women and girls is prevalent. What have you found out about that space and why you're so keen to help in that particular area?
Public transport across the UK has lots of what I would call hidden spaces. There's a lot of spaces where as a woman you might be alone at night, there might be low lighting, there might be very little monitoring or very old infrastructure, so very old CCTV, very grainy feeds. And what that presents is effectively an opportunity for perpetrators. And a situation which makes women vulnerable. So if we can introduce a system that starts to continually monitor and look for these patterns of behaviour, that operates well in low light, that is looking for operatives, for security operatives, so that they don't have to be looking all of the time everywhere, then we have an opportunity to start to make some of these hidden spaces a little bit safer.
Rosie, it's incredible work that you're doing, and this comes from a very personal place because you have experience of violence against you and assault when you were 12 in a crowded public space. Can you talk to me about what happened when you were so young? Because that incident is the driver for what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely is. And it's the reason that I've pushed this forward in the face of the barriers that you naturally encounter when you try to develop a new technology. What happened to me as a 12-year-old, I was stood in a crowd watching the Tour de France, and it was a very compressed crowd, very busy crowd. And there was a man walking through that crowd, just sexually assaulting women as he went. And he did that to me as a 12-year-old, and I didn't know how to handle it or how to react. But what I saw from the adults in the crowd was actually they were just moving themselves away. Everyone was inevitably disgusted and uncomfortable, but actually no one took any action in that. Everyone knew what was happening, but people just moved themselves into their own space. And you seem to get this kind of, well, it's a well-known fact, you get this bystander effect within crowds. And when I look at the data that we have, and I look at the scenario that I was in as a 12-year-old, if I had a view of that crowd right now, I could see that behaviour.
It's incredibly brave of you to share that story, because I know that you want to concentrate on the tech and helping women and girls in the space. So thank you for sharing that. I know that you've been asked about it before, but it will never get any easier. You talk about the barriers in trying to get new tech up and running. Was one of the barriers being a woman asking for investment in this space? We now talk about violence against women and girls and tackling it much more, but that hasn't always been the case.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a barrier. I think being a woman is a barrier to getting into the position that I'm in within a technology company. I'm really, really lucky where I work that has not been a barrier for me, but for many people it is. It's a barrier to working in the security industry, which is hugely male-dominated as well. So it's not just the technology industry, it's the security industry as well. And then you're talking about violence against women. So you are, most of my time, I spend talking to a sea of men about violence against women. And it has been very recently that the tide has felt like it's starting to turn.
There really is no limits to this technology and where you want to take it, Rosie. You are very much in the early stages, collecting data, finding out where it works best. And there was another thing that happened to you and your family that, again, is pushing you on. And I only bring this up because, again, this technology can help in so many areas. Violence against women and girls is one of the most pressing issues of our times, and it's very much where the focus is. But you lost your brother in an altercation in the street. And again, you were only young, you were only 7. And now, through what you're doing, you can see how the technology, if it was around back then, could have helped.
Yeah, and it's funny that, isn't it? Like of everything that's happened to me and people have told me about their experiences, it's always him that sits on my shoulder and goes, "Go on, just push it that little bit further and keep going," because we do rely in the UK on pretty old infrastructure most of the time, and getting convictions and building evidence cases is really, really difficult with the best will in the world. And we need to make a change to that.
Just some breaking news to bring you regarding the hantavirus outbreak on that cruise ship in the South Atlantic Ocean. We've just had a statement from the UK Health Security Agency who say that 2 people have returned to the UK independently, having been on board that cruise ship. Neither of these individuals is currently reporting symptoms. The UK HSA saying that it continues to work with the World Health Organisation, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and the Department of Health and Social Care and other international partners to prepare for the arrival of British nationals to the UK from the MV Hondius cruise ship that has that outbreak of hantavirus. We did find out earlier on today that there has been an agreement with the Canary Islands for the ship to dock in Tenerife this weekend. Ministers saying that that plan is safe. The 150 passengers and crew on board will disembark in Tenerife at the weekend and then go through a process of testing and quarantine before they are allowed to head home. The UK HSA saying 3 people, including 1 British national with suspected hantavirus, have been evacuated from the ship already in order to receive medical care in the Netherlands in coordination with the Cape Verde, UK and Dutch governments. UK HSA are in close contact with the medical teams providing their care. UK HSA saying the remaining British nationals can now be repatriated once the ship docks at its next destination, which we now know is Tenerife, if they do not develop symptoms. None of the British citizens on board are currently reporting symptoms, but they are being closely monitored. The Foreign Office is making arrangements for these individuals to return to the UK, where the UK HSA is working with the government to support them to isolate with regular testing and contact with healthcare professionals. Just reiterating that the UK HSA is aware of 2 people who returned to the UK independently, having been on board the cruise ship at the centre of this hantavirus outbreak. However, they are saying that neither of these individuals is currently reporting symptoms. They are receiving advice and support from the UK HSA. Now, the "it's always 5 o'clock somewhere" saying is perhaps most commonly used to justify an early morning pint at the airport. For some, it's a way of starting a holiday, a tradition, if you like, but it can cause serious issues when people take it too far, drinking too much before they get on a flight. It's caused the boss of Ryanair, Michael O'Leary, to say that we should actually call time on this tradition to curb the number of disruptive passengers. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now by a former EasyJet captain, Emma Henderson, and head of travel at The Sun, Lisa Minnow. Good to see you both this evening. I must admit this has been a subject of fierce debate in the newsroom and right across social media after Michael O'Leary's comments earlier this morning. I'm going to come to you first, Lisa, if I may, because, you know, you have travelled the world, spent many times at airports at various different times of the day. Do you have a little tipple pre-6 a.m?
Yes, I'm afraid I am guilty of that. My favourite is a Bloody Mary. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a drink at an airport to start off, you know, a holiday, a really, exciting event that you're, saved up a long time for. I think I would also say that the one and only time that I've seen really serious disorder on a plane was not first thing in the morning. It was on a late night flight, or not late night, a late afternoon flight, coming back from the Canary Islands. It was Cape Verde. That's right, it was from Cape Verde. And it was drunken passengers who had drunk at the airport. I don't think it matters what time of day. If somebody wants to drink to an extent where they actually then interrupt a flight and could disrupt a flight, what time of day it happens is irrelevant.
Yeah. I mean, Lisa, you sound like you take these rules sensibly. Just a little tipple before you get on a flight as a treat, as most people do. But Emma, you've seen countless incidents where people do just take it too far. They don't see it as a treat. They just get overexcited, shall we say. And what are the consequences of that?
Well, I have seen that, and I agree with Lisa that I don't think this is aimed in any way at people who do follow the rules and do take it seriously. But the reality is that if you have got a situation like that gets inflamed inside a really sort of tight enclosed space like an aircraft, it can be so bad that the aircraft needs to divert, and that basically threatens the safety of the people on board the aircraft, which nobody wants. And I think the majority of the travelling population would never intend to happen either. It's a very small number of people who go on to do things like this, but it's just so dangerous when it happens.
Yeah, Emma, what's the worst you've seen?
Well, I've had to offload drunk passengers from my flights, but the worst time was when a fight broke out. We had actually pulled onto stand and were parked, and I had just left the flight deck to go and say goodbye, and a fight broke out on board, and one of the passengers headbutted another passenger and his nose was flattened into his face, and it was horrific for everybody around. And it also meant it was 3 a.m. We had to call the police, obviously. So there was a lot of paperwork. It was not very nice for everybody around. Those situations can really get big quickly as well, because people are sort of scared and they start to get involved, and it's just not a good ending to anybody's holiday, is it?
Yeah, and Lisa, it doesn't have to be a big situation like that. I mean, Emma, that sounds horrific for you, the crew and the passengers on board. But I think we've probably all been on a flight where we felt a little bit uncomfortable because somebody is too loud. They don't necessarily have to be abusive, but you can tell that they're drunk, and perhaps if you're on a plane with kids, it can be uncomfortable. But because they're not taking it as far as you just described, Emma, we just have to sit there in this uncomfortable space, in a contained space, and it does make you very nervous as a passenger, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case. But, I mean, you have to remind everybody here that while Michael O'Leary is saying that, you know, we should not be drinking in airports first thing in the morning, it is actually the airline's responsibility to make sure that anybody who boards their plane is not intoxicated. So in this particular instance, and I'm not saying this is anything to do with EasyJet, but if you look at the way that Ryanair's boarding gate staff are incentivised to try to find luggage that is the wrong shape, would it not make more sense for those same people to be keeping an eye out for people who are intoxicated and could possibly create real disruption on a flight? I think what I have the utmost sympathy for is the crew that have to deal with this. On the occasion that I was on an EasyJet flight, one of the crew members was attacked very unfairly, physically attacked by a young woman. The flight was eventually, after a 3-hour delay, they managed to get her off the plane. It was extremely frustrating for everybody. I didn't feel in danger, but I felt very, very angry that this person who was just doing their job was being attacked in this way. So I am not saying that there isn't something that should be done, but I think it's about making sure there's some kind of national register. If you are disruptive on a flight and a flight has to be diverted, then perhaps you should be banned from all flights. And maybe it's about showing the consequences in that way that will make these people, who are the very small minority, actually change their behaviour.
Well, Lisa, you make some really good points there. We did invite Michael O'Leary onto the programme tonight, but you make a good point there about them checking luggage fanatically, perhaps checking for those who have had too much to drink as well. I'll put that to him when I eventually do speak to him. But Emma, is it a case of, should it be up to the airline and the crew and the pilot? I mean, you've got enough to do in terms of getting that plane off the ground and getting everybody in the air safely. Should it be up to the venues inside the airports, the pubs and bars that serve these drinks? Because that's where they're getting them from at that time of the morning. And should they not operate like any other pub or bar where if they see somebody drinking too much, they say, you have had enough, we're not serving you anymore?
So absolutely that should happen. It should work like any other place that you would be able to buy alcohol, for sure. But actually, to some of those points, it's not just down to the crew to manage it. That is checked at the gate. And if somebody is deemed to be unfit to fly by the gate staff, they will come and inform the crew and say there's people at the gate that I don't think we should allow to board, or they'll take that decision themselves. They have the right to deny boarding. So it's not always left to the crew to deal with those situations, and it's certainly not limited to any one airline. But absolutely, the crew are trained to deal with those situations as well. Probably more so because they're having to deal with them on board, you know, in a contained space. They do go through training to understand how to restrain people, and they have the right to refuse to serve alcohol on board as well. In fact, there have been flights where all alcohol has been refused because it's being considered that there are too many people who are drunk on the flight. And the problem comes really when you have a big delay, for example, and people just have the opportunity to sit around the airport drinking, and they're angry, and they're in a confined space, and they're a bit afraid because they don't know if their flight's going to go. And it really is a minority of people. It's just that when something happens, it's a big deal.
Well, listen, it's been a really interesting discussion, and we're discussing this because of Michael O'Leary's comments, the head of Ryanair, and the fact that statistics are on the rise when it comes to incidents that involve drink and airports and airlines. Lisa and Emma, thank you so much for your contribution this evening. I've got a 6 a.m. flight tomorrow. I'm now thinking twice about what my choice of beverage will be as I head to the gate. Maybe a nice strong coffee.
Good luck.
Thank you. Might be something else if there's a delay. Right, still to come on the UK Tonight. Celebrations for Arsenal fans as the Gunners make it into the Champions League final for the first time in 20 years.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
A lot of local and national seats are up for grabs.
Waiting for the people's vote on who will sit in them.
It's your chance to have a say
on who has a seat at the table.
Follow Sky News as we give you the best seats in the House.
From voting
to the results,
the analysis,
and what comes next.
Join us for Vote 26.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
These immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
I'm observing what you're doing.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's very positive.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
David is here with a look at the sport, and I did say before the break that I had a 6 a.m. flight tomorrow. I haven't. It's on Friday. I will be here tomorrow night. My producer fainted, thinking there'll be nobody sitting here to talk to you tomorrow night.
I just talked to myself.
Yeah, I was so excited that I thought of a pre-flight drink at 5 a.m, clearly. Right, I tell you who is celebrating with fizz and all sorts, the Gunners, after that incredible game last night, into the Champions League final for the first time in 20 years. And I saw a lot of people on social media doing this trend where they posted pictures of what they looked like 20 years ago, if they're an Arsenal fan, because it has been some time, but fans might find it really hard to get out to Budapest, which has brought them back down to earth with a bump today.
My photos would have looked like with a lot more hair gel, but different colour hair. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you talked about flights. I mean, this is the main problem. How do we get out there? How do we get into the game? Where do we stay? How much is it going to cost?
Part of the fun, though, isn't it, when your team do well unexpectedly?
Yes. If you've got £1,500 spare, then you can get a return flight to Budapest. The only available hotel rooms appear to be 20 miles outside Budapest, so factor in that cost and that time as well. Look, Wizz Air are trying to do their bit. They're headquartered in Budapest and they're in Hungary. They want to double the number of flights from London and run 6 flights on Saturday. On top of that, though, lots of other options. People are trying to be creative. There's always a crazy fan who decides to just drive the whole thing in a caravan,
them,
right?
No doubt, after the final.
100%. We'll hunt them down. Yeah, so there are other places you can go. Bratislava, Vienna, Bucharest. I feel like Simon Calder all of a sudden. Or you can go direct by bus 48-hour journey, though, Friday night in Nuremberg. It only costs 300 quid, apparently. But then there's tickets I mentioned before. So starting off at only £60, that's good, but that's only certain fans would get those. Category 1, £820. Category 2 with a restricted view, £650.
With a restricted view?
Yeah. And also, you know, that's via UEFA's direct platforms, but if you go via a secondary platform where you're not meant to, £4,000 for a ticket is currently what they're costing.
Is incredibly good.
Yes, I know. Never seen together in the same room.
Big boost, though, for Arsenal for the remainder of the season. Of course, you know, more big things potentially to come.
We mentioned this, a momentum shifter. The win over Fulham, getting it through over 2 legs against Atletico. If they can get through against West Ham away from home this coming weekend, you sense that could be them effectively doing what they need to do. But obviously Manchester City, they still believe, and they've got 5 games in 15 days to see if they can do a domestic double the Premier League and the FA Cup. So along with all the questions that Arsenal fans have been asking themselves about the Champions League final in Budapest, there's one other. Who are they going to play?
James, can you do a big clap in front of your face? Perfect. OK, mate, in your own time.
One word to describe James Milner.
Legend. Unique.
Consistent. Dedicated.
Intense.
Brilliant.
He just loves to win.
I think he's everything you'd want to be in a footballer.
The Premier League loves James Milner.
Hi James, congratulations on breaking the all-time Premier League appearance record. I know how hard it is to keep going. You've done phenomenal, so well done.
To be appreciated by your teammates and appreciate what you give, that's pretty special.
England's future looks healthy, and here at Leeds United's training ground, they reckon they're once again groomed.
Let's take a look at the weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
The next few days looking cool, pretty cloudy and mainly dry, but there will be a risk of showers, some of them heavy. It'll be mostly fine this evening, showers in the north and west, mainly over the northwest of Scotland. South East England could expect a little patchy rain as well. Northern Scotland will see showers slowly fading inland tonight as more general rain moves into the far north. Elsewhere, it's looking dry, by the odd shower over eastern and western coastal counties. It's going to turn chilly and locally frosty where skies are clear. Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland will see showers developing widely tomorrow morning and more general showery rain moving into the increasingly windy northwest by lunchtime.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
That's all from the UK tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Up next is The World with Yalda Hakim. See you tomorrow night.